An introduction to science and religion. Well, what is religion? We've seen religion throughout the ages, and even within Indianism, which dates back, I'm told, I initially thought 30 or 40,000 years ago, but I'm told that it stretches further back, and there's been a re-enumeration of religions over a long period of time. So within Indianism, it was simply to understand that we are part of creation and God, but we then also embodied God, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, and that the creative force was a divine feminine force, hence the goddesses, which leans very much towards Persia in terms of the female warriors and basically a matriarchal system. Now we live in a male-dominated patriarchal system. But religion itself is simply understanding that there's something greater than ourselves. There's a deeper truth to all of this reality. And also understanding that we have to live a righteous life where we are honest and we are caring and we serve one another. That itself ties to nature and science, nature being the first science. If we look at the movie Cloud Atlas, which is a German published book by somebody very intelligent, and everybody's perspective and reviews on this movie are very different, but it shares my ideas, it shares my beliefs that our lives are not our own. People are bonded to one another. We are bonded to the earth. We come from the 5 elements, and we are bonded to one another. Anger, hate, love, fear. All of these emotions are eternal. These emotions exist within us long before and after we are here, and even when we perish, our bodies perish. The body will perish, it's just a vessel. If we look at Indianism and Buddhism, the Prince Gautama, Buddha himself, seen the suffering in the world and found God from meditation, from his own self-realization. He was a prince and had everything, but something still wasn't right. Why is it that we see today disruptions and issues and problems when people come into more money? We'll see people divorce, a married couple break apart if they win the lottery, for example. Why does that happen? Because there is a law, there is an order. Even the native Indians that lived on this land thousands of years ago, that just lived off the land, were very unmaterialistic, lived very tribally, ate off the land, understood how reincarnation works with animals, how our body returns back to the ground. They themselves said that if you hurt, then I hurt. Very metaphysical and quantum. This is science. This is what scientists today are looking at and trying to understand. So in terms of religion, it's been reinvented. Christianity was reinvented. Jesus, Yeshua, did not come to earth to start a new tradition or form of Christianity, because the Abrahamic teachings of Abraham or Judaism basically is exactly the same as Christianity, and even Islam with Muhammad, who actually meditated himself. So from meditation we find our own truth within this existence. Somebody that would take all of these religions, which is what I will be doing in this audio book. I will be analysing all of the different religions and teachings, and even the dogma within it, even the things that I don't personally agree with. I will be taking all of it and stripping it and putting in how it works, because a lot of people say, well, I wasn't actually Buddhist, I believe that there was something beyond this, that there was a God or a creator. But then when I looked at Buddhism, it basically fell in line with my own beliefs. But if we look at religion from an argument and people to say, well, I'm a Buddhist, I'm better than you, and I'm a Christian, I'm better than you, that doesn't work. Lack of knowledge, lack of understanding. You've got the two-dimensional thinking, where you'll say something because you've read it in a book, or you've read it in a scripture, or you've read it in a doctrine, or the teacher told you at school. And you'll say, yeah, the grass is green and the sky is blue for these reasons. But the true knowledge is going beyond that, going deeper than that. And this is where science is actually now going, and it has been for some time, the higher dimensional science. Within higher dimensional science, we'll actually prove the existence of an intelligent creator. That's one thing I've always said. All of these people who were inventors and painters and artists within modern history, like your Da Vinci's and your Newtons and your philosophers and your physicists and astrologers and astronomers, even in modern history, Galileo and all of these people, they were all spiritual and religious. What is spirit? What is energy? It's everything. Spirit and energy and even consciousness lower down on the sub-levels is the construct of what makes everything what it is. And relative to nature, relative to science, within Buddhism, within Sikhism, within Indianism, and even within Christianity and the mystery schools of how Jesus himself went to India, Buddha himself looked at the other mysteries and traditions and religions and then went within. These people didn't start new religions. These people simply give their perspective of what they believed. And simply, you don't have to follow a particular religion, but if you live honestly, if you work hard, and if you meditate or chant the name of God, which is simply truth, even without a name, if you simply believe in your heart that there is an intelligent creator, you will be a spiritual being. You will become what you do. And it's fascinating how the brain changes, how the brain actually develops. Science has done studies on spiritual and religious people and said that their emotional brains are far more developed than people who are not in this. Even if we look at free thinking people, people who are open-minded, who look at the state of the world today, they're the ones that fall into belief systems. They're the ones that fall into religions. And we can look at the right side of the brain, creation, duality, and how we are connected to this physical plane, but we are actually higher beings coming through the cycles of material and reincarnation. Did we change? Or is everything around us different? These are the questions. Who are you as an individual? What do you believe? What do you think? Look at your own life's perspective. This is what this audiobook is really about. It's some of the more subtle things within religion, and really looking at all religions, and just simply to understand that it's about living in a righteous way, because nothing bad comes of being good with one another. Nothing bad comes of understanding and appreciating this life. Nothing bad comes from controlling your emotions, your angers, your hates, your desires. And to understand that if there is something beyond this, then we're going to have to transcend this physical reality. And this is the heart and message of all the religions, is simply to continue and transcend and adapt and evolve. And basically Jesus said, you will go to the kingdom of heaven, which is basically a different planet, is a planet that does not have the parameters of this planet. You could be a light being, you could be someone then that's sent back into this planet to help others once you've transcended. It's a little bit like when you've reached a certain level of awareness and understanding, you then go back to help people who don't understand. If you're the leader in what you're doing, even if you look at studies and education, teachers and people like that, they were the ones who were more academically not intelligent but more capable. They come back to help those that are not. Again, this is a form of righteous living. So even we look at education systems and government originally put in place to do good. Everything has basically been manipulated to then take it to a point of taking advantage of people and corruption. How ego and power itself has a metaphysical pattern. There is a pattern to it all. We go through different phases of ego, and then power, and then corrupt. From jealousy comes hate. From greed, jealousy comes hate. From hate comes sin, comes an act of violence or manipulation or doing something to a particular individual. These are all things within the mind, and religion looks at the mind. All religions are there to basically look at the mind and what's happening within the mind, and to focus on something higher. Because when we focus on something higher, when we focus on climbing Mount Everest, that's the first step to actually doing it. When we focus on where focus goes, energy flows. When we focus on getting from one place to another, first we need a roadmap. We need to understand where we are. We can't go from one location if we don't know where we currently are. So religion basically takes us from looking at where we are. And all religions have had different perspectives for a specific reason, and that reason is that when religion was necessary, when there was suffering, when there was wars, when there was killing, all of the religions that have come from oppression and understanding suffering, again very Indian, from creation comes destruction, and from destruction comes creation as a cycle. This is why we see the wheel, this is why we see the yin and yang, this is why we see torsion, this is why we see always a cycle. This is why when this suffering was happening, the anointed ones, the ones with the higher awareness and knowledge and the God consciousness, were then to say, well, to stop this, you have to then, it's like the flow of a river, the currents of a river. If there's a lot of bad happening on the world, we have to stop and say, well, to change this, to alter the current of this river, to alter this, we have to go within, we have to understand and contemplate what righteous living is. Because the being, the universe itself, is a living being. How do we find happiness? These are all the things that are within religion. How do we find peace? How do we transcend material suffering? These are all answers that are within the religions. Anybody who uses dogma and uses things along the lines of, well, all religions have created the wars, they don't know the first thing about religion. I would urge anybody to study for several hours. I've done it for several years, for over a decade, but just take several hours and listen to this audio, and then tell me at the end of it what your perspective of religion is. Because there has to be order in life, there has to be order in the universe, and this is not an order to control you, to enslave you, which is now what it has become, which is money is in the materialistic religion, the religion of material, and how money in one eye basically works, and I'll explain that later. But simply as an introduction, to just acknowledge That religion is there to allow us to contemplate something higher. So in definition, when we focus on understanding that, we will become a part of it and we will move towards it. If we look at the biggest religions in the world, the most widespread religions, Judaism, Christianity and Islam are basically above the others in terms of the most widespread religions. Those three religions are related. They're family religions because it's a monotheistic God, a single creator or a single God. Also, Sikhism leans towards that belief that there's a single universal creator God. Now, there's differences like within any families. There is disagreements within those three religions, those main three. Judaism believes that the Messiah is yet to come. Christianity believes that it was in the tenant or the actual Messiah. The messenger was Jesus Christ or Yeshua. And Islam acknowledges those messiahs, those messengers, as in five: Moses, Noah, Jesus, Muhammad, and initially Abraham. Now, Abraham, there's differences in the name, as in the name of Adam and Adamu, and Abraham and Ibrahim, and how Jesus, within the movie of Passion of Christ, referred to God as Lahi, which is basically one of the references that's used in Islam as Allah or Lahi. So there's a variation within the language and the terms and the words, but simply those three major religions are related. If we zoom back and look at Hinduism, which predates those three religions by a long way, their belief is that we are the gods, that basically Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, we embody God. And Sikhism itself, within some of the more subtle messages within Sikhism, and it's interesting that the Sikhism heritage comes from Hinduism. There is a reference to God finding from within. Now, all Indianisms basically you find the knowledge, you find God consciousness, you find the awareness of God, you find your place in this existence by the self-realization. That varies slightly within those three major religions. I would probably say Islam mostly, because Islam is a very strict religion, and also Christianity. But Judaism is slightly different as well. It's interesting how it's ISMism is indicating that it's more practical in terms of the self, I, as in, it is, I is in itself, the single I, and I is a person. Now, within some of the hidden knowledge of Christ, the apostles, the difference between the Old Testament, New Testament, and messages put in afterwards, the Torah as well, of the book within Judaism, and how they reference the messenger and God as a Yahweh within physical form, within the form of the vessel and the man. Man won't listen to a transcendental being that appears, that resembles a giant and has all knowledge and all awareness and superpowers. modern Christianity would reference that as the devil. But in terms of consciousness and higher awareness, there is a fascinating link between all of these religions that not many scholars, religious scholars, have actually seen, and to me it's very obvious. Jesus, one of the messages that Jesus put to his disciples, and even Lord Krishna in India had the same number of disciples, the 12 disciples, was that if you follow me, you will become me. That is a massive reference to the belief system within Hinduism, that God is within. If you follow what I do, if you do as I do, you will become what I am. You will attain knowledge, you will attain abilities, not potentially in a single lifetime, although it's happened with Moses when he went to Mount Sinai and he found, what his perception or his understanding of God was. And it was simply energy as well. Muhammad found a similar type of energy. For man, that is God, because our thinking still is very limited and two-dimensional. And in fact, all religions are fairly limited, especially those main three. Hinduism and Indianism, Brahmanism from India, has a way broader perspective of God. If we look at reincarnation and now incorporate reincarnation across other planets, and within our perspective acknowledge that there's many forms of beings on other planets, some that are below our awareness, some that are very indigenous and primitive, and those who are very human but very spiritual, and their brain itself is highly more developed than ours, simply because brain develops through being selfless, not selfish. Then you can actually start to see why the teachings within religion teach us to be selfless, teach us to be kind, and all of these rules are actually implemented because that itself, when we do as we are told, when we follow what Jesus and others have said, then we will embody that, we will become that, we will then become higher beings. This, in terms of scientific study, is very conclusive. There's evidence in terms of the brain development. Look at the emotional brain, how a person's ability when they become selfless, how their brain actually develops and they attain more knowledge. There's been a couple of cases where people who were very spiritual believed in donating their organs and donated blood and also their hearts upon death. When these hearts were transplanted into other beings, other people, then people became very spiritual and very knowledgeable. In fact, a complete change of personality. This is recorded. So there's been some changes, not physically within the body, but in terms of consciousness and higher awareness. And if we look at the mind and body argument, the inner world and the outer world, it's very apparent to me that all of these religions are connected. Some emphasized more points depending on the actual, audience or requirement. So for those people who were more, for example, a lot of people would say, well, Jesus would help the criminals and the people who were sinners. Well, if he gave them a perspective of a bigger picture to everything, in terms of even I believe that Yeshua and Joseph, the hidden knowledge or the missing knowledge is that he said that there's no such thing as death. Why did he arise? Why did he have to come back after 3 days and show certain people, certain followers, that he was still there? If he didn't give them an understanding, an insight of reincarnation, that today is not accepted in Christianity. Is reincarnation something that most Christians believe? I would probably say it is. There's some Christians that are completely against it, those that will take things, look at a book and just read the words on the book, and then there's those who already have that wisdom within their genetic memory, operating from a higher awareness, that will know that even though it's not emphasized or highlighted that actual knowledge is very true and real. Everybody's individual. How does that relate to the religions? Well, it does, because there's mystery schools as well that had a more holistic, wider look at everything. And again, Sikhism is one of those religions that looks upon other religions and acknowledges those religions, but knows that there's a grand message, there's a bigger message to all of this, that there is limitations within material existence. Again, Indianism, that we hear in material form, to go through, to basically, you have to reap the weeds that you sow. So we are here to basically live through our past mistakes, and from the obstacles, from the suffering, from the different learnings that we have, that we will then develop. In terms of that cycle itself is pretty much endless. It would be endless, wouldn't it, if we were soon to discover that there's a few thousand planets just within our reach and star systems, and that are capable of bearing human life. And why is it that extraterrestrials are sort of like the keepers of the garden, or the ring bearers or handers down of these religions? I certainly believe that it was extraterrestrials who were behind and interacting with Jesus. There certainly is references of that for Guru Nanak, because he actually went into the sea and indicated that from going into the sea for 3 or 4 days, he interacted with other beings that lived under the sea, or he actually accessed them from a wormhole or from an area under the sea. Buddha did the same thing. From wormholes, he was transcendental. Moses found energy and also interacted with other beings, and so did Jesus. In fact, there's a reference within one of the Bibles that Jesus actually went on board a ship. Was it a ship on the sea, or was it a ship from the sky? And if you look at some of the paintings and pictures within Christianity, they reference a flying machine. Again, in India, Vimanas, flying machines, the chariots of the gods, and Eric von Daniken and all these writers who've indicated this, and even ancient aliens have said that a messenger or an angel, somebody with wings, doesn't necessarily mean that they have the physical wings. Those wings mean that they have a higher awareness, higher knowledge. And the actual halo around somebody's head doesn't indicate that there's a halo there. It simply means that the third eye is open, that the actual 10th gate is open. They have God consciousness, they have higher consciousness. Christ itself means the anointed one, but it also means somebody who has God consciousness, of higher consciousness. Jesus himself was of higher awareness and higher consciousness, but he couldn't go to several thousand people who were following Christianity and say, well, you have to do as I say to become me, and by the way, there's several thousand planets out there. I've been tasked to come here to Earth to change your perception and understanding, otherwise you won't develop and never gain these access to these other planets, or you will never incarnate onto these other planets, because that itself is the kingdom of heaven. And this relates to the Vedas, heavenly planets, hellish planets and earthly planets. So for me, all religions have an objective. They have a very specific purpose to get people to understand that there's something bigger than all of this. And that's exactly what you would do to ants that live on their small little anthill, that have no awareness of the waterfalls in Niagara. The ants have no knowledge of great fascinating worlds within the sea, and mountains and beaches and all of those different areas on a single planet. We are the same. We have just to say, we're still learning about this earth. He couldn't say that I've incarnated onto this earth and I have very specific memories of who I am in my true form, because Jesus in his true form was probably a super being, and this is how he had abilities to heal and bring people back from the dead. And this again was something that the Gurus did. Guru Nanak had the ability to do that, and Sri Guru Har Krishan also brought his friend back from the dead and cured a small epidemic of smallpox within India. Now, if we look at the handprint of Guru Nanak, he took that rock and took it down to its form within energy and basically melted the actual rock. His hand went through the actual rock. That indicates that his brain was able to manipulate the actual physical matter of that rock, which is very metaphysical. If we look at cases of abductions within extraterrestrials and aliens, and those who are giving people higher knowledge and awareness, they can actually allow people to float through walls, doors, and glass where it's not even there. It's a very similar principle. Was Guru Nanak interacting with aliens? Of course he was. All of these messengers, messiahs, even Noah, there's stories when he took DNA, it wasn't physical animals and people, it potentially could have been DNA onto Earth. He was being helped by the aliens, the ones who potentially are behind putting humans onto this very planet for a specific purpose, as a school of mind and consciousness, to allow us to then adapt and go on to the higher planets. And this is very much indicated within the Guru Granth Sahib, within Sikhism and also Indianism, but the perspective within Islam, Judaism and Christianity is very limited. They will tend to, this is why there's disagreements, because it's one of those things, well, that can't be right and I don't believe that. The belief itself is limited. Somebody with an open mind, find somebody who's religious with an open mind, and that's where you'll find that's the first step to actually reaching higher awareness and higher consciousness. Now, Jesus himself was never Christian. He lived and died as an actual Jew. Within Indianism, there's a connection there because, and Sikhism itself, one of the things that Sikhism very strongly affirms is this existence is false. This time now which we are in, within material existence, this phase itself is very false. What does material do? Well, look at the kings and rulers. Why do you think Moses came? To basically liberate slavery which was happening in Egypt. Again, the same type of thing. Reincarnation happened with a Messiah figure, Christ, when the Romans were causing tyranny and control and corruption in the Western material way of thinking. This is why Judaism believes that we are yet to see Messiah, because the end times have not yet come. Things are yet to get worse. The co-creators of man, of humans, the extraterrestrials and higher beings, are very aware of what's happening on this earth, and through the suffering, through some of the things which are happening, which again is very metaphysical and explained within Indianism. It's the sand in the oyster that makes the pearl. So when they say that there's going to be only the just will survive, and we are being liberated simply by living through this existence, those of us who walk towards the light or glance towards the light will be liberated, because we are not focused on the falsehood, the darkness, ignorance and animalistic thinking. Think of the Vedas, path of ignorance, animal, path of enthusiasm, mind, and path of spirit or truth, spiritual. So animal, ignorance, enthusiastic mind, and spirit and truth. So truth, light, spirit, metaphysically are all connected. Again, it circulates, it cycles. So you had Guru Nanak come in India when the Mughal rulers within Islam, again very strict Islamic people that took the Islam religion to an extreme. It wasn't for castles and material and gold, it was to control people, to point the stick and say you have to do it this way because you're not making our God happy. Again, that's not, in my opinion, that's not monotheistic, where you're saying, well, there's a single creator God, which is the same God for all beings. Within Sikhism, if you look at the scriptures, and NASA have actually acknowledged that there's very advanced knowledge within the Guru Granth Sahib, and in terms of talks about the planets and how the sun even orbits. If they had those beings, those gurus, the tenets of that knowledge and awareness and consciousness, who were either higher beings or extraterrestrials themselves, or were interacting with those beings simply to take man and guide man, the humanity, the masses, into a particular direction where we wouldn't harm ourselves, and keep this planet as it is, in terms of a conscious planet for conscious and mental growth and awareness, they actually very specifically said that there is kingdoms of heaven, and they also acknowledged consciousness and other beings. So they had knowledge of other beings on other planets. So if there's other beings and there's one God above even the higher beings, and even beings, let's just look at this from a very open mind perspective, let's just say that there's races of aliens out there that can create a planet and put an entire species onto that planet. Well, then there's a God above them, and that's what Guru Nanak's message was. And there is a painting where Guru Nanak, within the temples in India and also some of the Sikh temples in the UK, there is a specific painting which shows Guru Nanak going through the mountains and taking different gatherings of different demigods, half man, half hybrid god, blue beings, purple beings that resemble a hybrid animal like Hanuman, monkey god, Ganesh, elephant god, and these were all different offspring or different descendants of that bloodline or of that path, and saying to them, look, you have actually altered from your path. We see this in Greek mythology. If you look at how the gods are playing a game of chess, and then the different gods themselves, Poseidon's and things like that, are coming out of the sea and putting obstacles in the way, like a game of chess, a higher game, and everything in terms of energy has different levels, so it's being played out from one place, and then the game itself is being played out on this planet. The higher beings are very aware of what's happening on this planet, and how will they change things going forward if there's a third world war, if there's something where things get worse than what they are, and you pretty much can't get a lot worse than where we are now as a species, as a planet. How will they guide us through religion, through either re-emphasizing or rebranding another religion? Look at people. Why do people have to reinvent themselves? Why do people go for things that have a slightly different spin on them, but technically it's the same thing? Because we like something that's new. So they understand human psychology. So it's taking all of the different elements of the different religions and just simply putting it into another practice just to re-emphasize it. But the core message behind it is the same, and it's simply to keep man going on that progression of higher development, higher awareness. And this helps the ETs. This is how ETs, this is why there's testimony where people actually die, and their soul keeps going up, and their soul actually goes into space, and there's technology out there in space, and there's things out there in space which actually take these souls and they all gather like a cluster. And I've actually seen this in a dream where certain extraterrestrials are responsible for how reincarnation works. And again, within Hinduism, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, they said that Brahma and Lord Vishnu were in charge of the higher beings and how they incarnate through the different existences and planets, and those planets themselves are on their own development. So even a planet itself has a global consciousness, an earth consciousness, and how that actually operates throughout the universe. If we look at the universe being a living being, now if you said to a Christian or a Muslim the earth is alive and there's all of the planets are living beings, they'd look at you and they would be fairly confused. Jesus couldn't actually put that message across, but he had that knowledge because he went to the ancient mystery schools. He travelled, again, all of these messengers and messiahs are travellers. Guru Nanak walked from India all the way to the Middle East. So what are they doing when they're going from one place to another? Simply spreading the message. Now, within this argument, if we look at Christianity, Jesus himself had a wife and potentially children, a family. So when it was brought to Europe, when this knowledge, when that part of Israel was conquered and the knowledge was taken by the Western world, they had to cause a divide. I mean, the truth is always different on every level, and following a teaching that hasn't been altered or that is true in its essence has the most benefits. Now, if that truth has been altered, then people are going to be following, deception, disinformation, and deception, and there is a lot of that within religion. Personally, all of the teachers that have come to earth had a family, from Muhammad, Buddha, gurus, Jesus, Moses. If we look at all of them, even in the Chinese tradition of Taoism, they have teachers that symbolize hope and happiness and have their own gods. And simply the gods are the messengers or the messiahs or the prophets or the saints. It's just areas of thought. You are what you are in terms of your thinking ability and obviously your actions. If you practice what you preach, if you practice your actions. So Islam, if we look at Islam and Christianity, they are brother religions. One of the reasons why Muslims considered, and this is still happening today, we look at Sunni and Shia and the different types of Muslim sects. Within Islam there is a divide. There is also Freemasonry within Islam, and the version of Islam that came to Europe or the Western world was one which is very much tied into Freemasonry. Now, Freemasonry is occult. The true essence of Freemasonry is only known by, the high degree Masons. But women were chastised or considered as second-class citizens simply because the Muslim men couldn't control their lust and desire, which is one of the reasons why a woman wears the burqa or the burqa to cover her face, cover her body. If you ask women from the Muslim faith what they feel about that, and actually a lot of Pakistani women, obviously if you look at India, India was basically all one country before it was divided. The women of Pakistan have a strong resonance with their actual origins being within Hinduism, because a lot of knowledge that is within Islam actually comes from Hinduism. In fact, one of the main symbols for Islam is a Sanskrit Indian symbol. The men, not being able to control their desires, had to then blame the woman. Now, in terms of the force of creation, if we look at, a man and a woman coming together to produce children, that itself is not a sin, although it has been put forward in certain teachings and religions that this is something that's dirty or this is something that's a sin. Well, in actual fact it's not, because for purposes of creation, to pass generations on, it's actually something that's pretty much a miracle, the way conception happens, the way, from a scientific perspective, an embryo is formed and goes through all of the phases of creation. That is something that's very symbolic to the root force of creation, which is a very strong force. So it's the way it was interpreted. Again, man is weak and suffers from more desire than women. But in modern times, we see in that there's almost a change in that. Now you have women that have more desire than men, because there's an imbalance in everything, and then imbalance causes those types of emotions and feelings. So again, if we look at the Creator as being single, and mono, and we look back at the material and one eye, what we do in material understanding, physical body understanding, has got parameters, has got rules and guidelines, because further down that spiral we go, we're going to detach from higher awareness and spirit, basically a higher connection to that God source, to that God consciousness, or that spiritual source. In religions, God is referred to as him or he or himself. I'm completely against that, and it's also within Sikhism when the Bhagat, the actual teachers, and a lot of highly spiritual Sikh priests are actually philosophers, teachers, professors from old. So Sikhism, the more devout Sikh teachers are actually of a thinking capacity of professors, and even they have dissected Sikhism and the writings within Sikhism and said this was written because it was from this area. Some of Guru Granth Sahib comes from the Vedas, the three Vedic scriptures, because there was a sect system, there was a caste system within India, and there was very highly intuitive thinkers and very wise people, very spiritual and religious scholars within India, within all of the different regions of India. You know, you had probably in the region of a dozen different sects within Hindu people, Bangladeshi people, Sri Lankan people, Indian people, Pakistani people, Gujarati people. You know, even the coastal areas, there was different teachers within the castes, and they were basically finding the source or creator from within, and then were becoming teachers to create schools and to create followers within their own version of what they had experienced and what knowledge they had received. And this is very similar to Native Indian as well. This is why Native Indians had different sects and different leaders, different tribes. But simply the Gurus, when they came to India from Guru Nanak, they didn't look at the differences. They combined everything together and brought peace from looking at the similarities. And that's one of the things that fascinates me when I talk about religion to people. And a typical example was yesterday, that the Christian couple that I was speaking to were looking at the differences, and I actually corrected them and said, look at the similarities. And when I was explaining things, they were very fascinated, because the depth that I was going into, the detail that I was going into about the similarities. So it's looking at things from that perspective. Within Sikhism, the scholars have dissected the teachings of Sikhism and said that there was 3 different books, 3 different Bibles: Ard Granth, Dasam Granth, and Sarb Law. And the Ard is the head, Dasam Granth is the body, and the Sarb Law is the weapon, the Shastra, or the sword. And if we look at ancient civilizations, the sword is symbolized by knowledge within the material realm. And what's also interesting is how the creation force, or the serpent, the one who dominates the material world, you could look at the reptiles or the reptilian, how that serpent is going around the sword. Now, it's very, very interesting and symbolic that them 3 areas are connected, but they're also very different. Guru Nanak was more of the soft side, the head side, the mind, the peace, the philosophy of bringing light and truth, which is very much in the art, the head. Then the body, the material, the inner world, the outer world, the head, the mind, the body, the mind, body, and the soul. If we look at that, the Dasam Granth was how we control our, greed, desire, anger, attachment, ego, and those things that are very much part of 5 sense reality and the body computer understanding. A lot of that was explained in the sections of the Dasam Granth, which is the body and also what the environment and everything in material existence. The Sarab law is very interesting. It's almost like yin and yang, the soft and the hard, the warrior side, the weapon, how you protect yourself in times of oppression. Guru Gobind Singh said, in times of great suffering, when people are being slaughtered in the masses, the only righteous thing to do is to take the sword. And within Sikhism, there is sects within Sikhism today that disagree that Guru Gobind Singh shouldn't have defended himself. He would have been forgotten and just slaughtered. His whole family and followers would have just been slaughtered and converted to Islam. That's one of the reasons why all Sikhs are called Singh. And we have the status of Sardar in India, both from the Muslims and the Hindus, that they respect Sikhs for what they did. The true scholars within both faiths, Hinduism and Sikhism, respect the Sikhs. And there is a video on YouTube of a very prolific yogi that's very prolific in America, in the Western world as well, that actually points out that if Guru Gobind Singh didn't do what he did, we protected the Hindus. But if that didn't happen, a lot of things that we have in history would have been forgotten. An army of 2,200 soldiers defeated some 20,000-30,000 Mughal soldiers simply because he took the soft and the hard and combined it. A lot of teachings are within. If we look at warriors and kings, how being noble created strength, and if we look at humility and compassion and all of those things and apply that in our lives within nature and within existence, that we'll automatically find the balance. Look at the symbol of Hinduism, which is like the swastika. It symbolizes time and torsion and symbolizes within material the wheel. That's one of the reasons why on the Indian flag it's the symbol of a wheel, because it symbolizes rotation, reincarnation, cycles, time, and time itself is very, very much a factor of material existence. The similarities between religions and the future, and in closing on this lecture, as all religions have indicated, we've looked at Judaism, Christianity and Islam, which are family religions. They all believe in a monotheistic God, single creator God. Judaism, a difference of opinion that the Messiah is yet to come, and there's been some variations in the books, the writings, the Old Testament, the New Testament, and also the apostles and the followers, as in King David, who basically said that our materialistic understanding, the children of Abraham or the children of God. Bear in mind that Jesus himself was a Jew, that they will basically keep over and watch over that kingdom. Applying Judaism, Christianity and Islam, 3 peaceful religions. What's also interesting is that Muhammad himself meditated. Now the concept of meditation is throughout all religions, but specifically within Indianism. Even one of the world famous scholars, Dr. Zakir Naik, who's basically a Muslim, has done several talks and lectures on how all religions themselves are very similar. I share his opinion as somebody who has basically got analytic thought processes. If you look at all religions from an unbiased perspective, a perspective that you're not looking at religions to have a dialogue of competition, but more in a dialogue of agreement, where we can look at each faith and look at it from a perspective and say, well, this is all similar. I mean, even within Christians who are baptized, Sikhs themselves get baptized, but they take the holy water orally, so they consume the holy water, understanding within Indianism that 70 or 80% of the body is water. And again, it's all to do with harmonics and vibration, how that chemistry changes with the consumption of the holy water. One of the issues that Guru Nanak had with the Hindu people and the Hindu scholars within India at the time of 1500 is that one of the actual morning rituals, if you like, Hinduism being very ritualistic and Sikhism is non-ritualistic, is that the Hindus believe to cleanse the body is to actually cleanse the mind and the soul. Guru Nanak was completely against that. He said to cleanse the soul, it requires inner work, it requires a control, it requires honesty, it requires controlling desire, anger, ego, attachment and greed. You can't clean your mind. If you could be bathing and cleaning yourself in the river, but your mind, and in fact he read the mind of some people whose mind was in thinking about a woman. So basically they were having lustful thoughts, and he actually read the person's mind and said that this is what you're thinking, but whilst you're doing this, it doesn't mean that you're cleaning your mind. To clean your mind is to control the desire that you're having. So something very scientific and metaphysical that would be accepted in the modern world today. We would understand that, yes, even from looking at it from a perspective of causing peace and just a more civilized life, if you like, a more peaceful relationship with other people and family and friends, just to control desire, anger, greed, attachment, ego, and all of these things. And to be honest, would definitely, you would definitely see a benefit of that. I've met Jewish people, I've met Christian people, I've met Catholic people, Hindu people, Muslim people, Buddhist people, Sikh people, and to be very honest, I've never met a bad person that actually understands and practices their faith. So the actual violence and the wars and the hatred and all of the actual differences we've created from an interpretation. And even when Jesus and Muhammad came, and the same with Guru Nanak and the Buddha, they didn't actually set out to create another religion. They set out to just simply re-emphasize the teachings that were already there. We've seen this in Buddhism, we've seen this in India, we've seen this with Jesus and Abraham, and even Muhammad and Abraham, where they were simply just highlighting these religions again. What's interesting is the Spanish Crusades and the materialisticness and politics, how within the Roman Catholic element, the Christians carried out blood battles and wars to slaughter and kill Muslims and also Christian people, and to basically to put a negative spin on Christianity. Before that, I would probably say things were a lot more peaceful within the actual kingdom of Israel, not just within Israel, but within sort of like the Christian world and the Judaism world and the Islam world, the world of Islam. So that's a very pivotal point in history, the Spanish Crusades, if we look at those three branches of thought and practicing religion, Judaism, Christianity and Islam. If we look at Hinduism and Islam, again there is a link, because within the language both religions use the words the Immaculate One, the one without fear, the one without hate, the one that is timeless, the one beyond the ages. So they refer to the Creator as something that is immaculate, that does not share the same existence as ourselves as mortal as mortal living beings within a material existence, so as animalistic or animal beings. One of the things that's interesting is how we get into the future of religion and how we look at things from a broader perspective now and look at other forms of life, because we have to acknowledge initially, to be holistic and to be people of good consciousness and good awareness, we have to accept that there are other beings out there of high awareness and high knowledge within earthly realms and also within heavenly realms. There's obviously lower beings as well. This is explained greatly within Sikhism and Vedanta, that we go through the animal forms to reach human, simply to actually acknowledge what human life is on this earth and the fact that we are all children of God. Now, Christianity, Judaism and Islam both say the same thing: we're all children of God. If we are children of God, then the extraterrestrials who have orchestrated the religions, and in my understanding they definitely have, they've orchestrated keeping things right on this planet to a degree, so that reincarnation process across the planets can happen, and they obviously understand that. And these are the higher beings that can see when wars happen, when, for example, Hindus were being slaughtered in India by the Mughal Empire, the materialistic Islam Empire, which had not a lot to do with Islam, so to speak. Again, it was the rod, as in, this is how to be a Muslim, and you have to be a Muslim because being a Muslim is the only way. So very tunnel type vision. Again, not spiritual, not reading between the lines, not looking at things from a holistic view, that all religions is just different flavours, if you like, of the same thing, or different colours of the one light. Then that suffering and that loss of lives, the fact that the souls were simply just people, the death and the simple injection of souls into the spirit world was actually witnessed by the races that are looking after this planet, that are invested and interested in this planet, not from a materialistic understanding, but from an understanding of control and consciousness, which they believe that is their duty and their deed. They have actually been promoted to such a level of understanding and awareness that it then becomes their duty and deed in their understanding of God's work to actually then to maintain the materialistic creation. And this is explained in Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh within the Hindu scriptures, of how Lord Brahma puts higher beings. Then they're not specified as humans, but actually Vishnu beings or higher beings which are non-human, so they're actually extraterrestrial, and allowing them to actually come here and orchestrate religion, education systems and all of this, because they're of high awareness and they can see where things are going. Now, we talked about prophecies and predictions in the future and things before. I would say the planet's more holistic now, especially of other faiths and religions and cultures, than what it was